So I always like to start with some of my students. So I'm going to play a video for you and we're going to be off to the races. So welcome everyone. Ain't got no other. It's on the TV. Anthony, awesome job.
Hey, thank you so much. This was awesome. I'm super pumped. Sky's the limit. I won't be able to sleep tonight, so this is great.
That's why we're here, my friend.
A million books. There's a million exercises. I'd always do something from rhythm. I'd always do something from accents. I'd always do something from sticking, and I'd rotate them through so I didn't get bored with them all. With the mastermind course, you've got to use your anchor, and that's Jay. Tell him what your goal is. Then he will tell you, right, I think you need to do this, 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 and this, and concentrate on those things.
I agree with you. I mean, I think having the accountability there every single day, checking in with you and everybody else, it's gold.
1 EM, 2 EM, 3 EM, 4 EM. You just need that audiation to really be clear, and then you'll be able to play it like that. Yeah, that was it.
That's crazy. I'm sorry. Sorry. What you just showed me was crazy because I was just like, when you did that, I was like, I just never even like thought about, like you said, everything could be rolled. And I was like, I mean, yeah. And then you did it and I was like, oh. But what I was going to say is that what you're just basically more so showing me is like, glad I joined. I mean, it just showed me like how much I don't know.
1 E and 1. That's it. Yeah. I like to start with some of my students just so you guys can see kind of the results of what we're going to be learning here tonight. This is why I like to go through it first. Starting with my student Danny, who did that. That was a final outcome. I think Danny's first month was that Spin Doctors tune that Aaron Comas actually from the Spin Doctors ended up sharing to their page, which was really awesome. And then just going through, just looking at some of my students on their journeys. I'm not going to sit here and read through, but if you guys want to just like kind of peruse, just because we got a lot to cover. So there's just so many students that have been through this system that have really transformed their drumming. And I can't be any prouder of anyone. That's why I always like to start this way. And there's people that have actually watched this class that have never even studied with me that got so much just out of this one class. Someone like Cadence over here who actually just took this class. She ended up doing a Zoom with me. She didn't become a student, but she took the advice that I gave her and really parlayed it into actually a drumming profession. I just wanted to play this quick video from our one-on-one the other day. So this is Clay actually 1 month into my program.
I'm hitting stuff, I'm hoping it's in time, and I'm landing it.
Right.
But this time, last night, I was noticing like I didn't feel like I was behind and thinking about it. I felt like I was in front and in control of it. Do you know what I mean?
That's it, man. That's what we're going for.
And that felt a lot better, and it felt noticeably different.
So that was Clay talking about just working with his band 1 month in after working together inside of our program. Like I said, once you understand some of the foundations that we're going to talk about today, it really opens up in terms of just, it takes the blindfold away. And these are some of the things that we're going to talk about. So for those of you that are stuck, that's who I kind of want to talk about. And drop a 5 in the chat if you're one of these guys. If you're one of these guys that are stuck and don't know what to do, have been searching all over the internet and are trying to figure out ways to understand how to practice, and you just can't get anywhere. Okay, so Austin says 5, Dean says 5, Andrew says 5. Okay, so this is the reason that I'm showing you all these students first. They've benefited from this approach, and I want you guys to understand how to benefit as well. And that's what we're going to be covering. Now, a couple of things that I want to start with here. This is going to be a full lesson. So think of it like a podcast. If you ever listen to a podcast or anything like that, I go through this. It's going to take a while. I'm going to spend a little time here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these methods. We're going to tell some stories. I'm going to show you some of my background. There's going to be a lot we're going to go through. And I'm going to also talk about who this class is for and who it's not for. So let's kind of jump into this a little bit. So let's talk about what each of these students that I was talking about have in common. Even though each of them were at different levels, they all lacked a core understanding of some overlooked fundamentals. And this is what we're going to focus on today. They were unclear about their outcomes before they started. They were missing the why behind their practice. And this is another thing that we're going to cover today. Once they found out these fundamentals and they learned how to really apply them to their drumming, that's when everything changed. And that's when things changed for me as well. I shared it with them exactly what I'm about to share with you, and how complete mastery of these things is going to transform your playing. And it's really only 3 basic techniques that we have to really get into. But first, I use this term a lot. I say it's the term rock star. And I know it could come out a little campy when we say rock star, but I mean, let's be real. Like, I wanted to be a rock star. That's why I picked up the drumsticks when I was a kid. For me, it completely transformed my identity when I was like 12 or 13 years old and I went on the talent show and I got up on that stage and I was this little nebbishy kid with like glasses and like weird hair and, kind of pimply and nerdy. But when I stepped on that stage and I played drums in front of my whole class of middle school kids, that I arrived and everything changed for me. That was like my first feeling of rock star. Everybody's looking at me, cheering me on, and I'm playing this great solo, and it's just like the confidence exploded, and I got a taste of that. And like a drug, it kind of like sucks you in. And that's what it means to me. So for some of you, it might be playing in front of 20,000 people. For others, it might just be in your practice room, jamming along to your favorite tune. I just want to know what that means to all of you. And I want you to do that right now. Just let me know in the chat what you want out of drums. What's your main goal? What would being a rock star to you look like? Because it's different for everybody. Garrett says, I like R&B. Okay. What does that mean? Does that mean that you'd like to be in an R&B band? Do you see yourself playing out with that? Jim says technical command plus creative expression. That's fantastic. Let's see. Austin said, being able to play what I want and play proficiently enough to play professionally. Okay. And again, professionally is kind of broad, but that I consider anybody that has made any kind of money playing a gig as a professional at that point. But yeah, Elroy said, I want to be able to know how to learn and play songs as fast as possible. That's a great trait to be able to have too. Feeling in complete control. That's what Richard said. Matthias said, I'm about teaching, sharing knowledge, and making people fall in love with music and rhythm. I love that. That's amazing. Okay, Dan said, great practice, control, driving a band, dynamic improvement, being able to do well in a band. Is a dowel. I was like, dowel? What's dowel? There we go. Julek said, for me, it's about bringing various ideas in life and be proud of my work. Okay, so this is awesome. But you see how different it is for everybody? Everyone's got a different sense of what that means. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because you want that confidence to shine in any situation no matter what. Let's talk about who this class tonight is not for. And I'm just going to put a disclaimer out there. This is not really for beginners. Now, I take that with a grain of salt. When I say not for beginners, I say it because beginners tend to not know what it takes because they haven't had enough time. They don't have any skin in the game to really understand what it's like to work on this instrument for real. And this is going to go into the psychology of that. We're going to get deep into it. So if you're brand new to drumming, this information might be a little bit over your head, and that's okay. I just don't want to waste anyone's time. If you're here for entertainment or anything like that, that's also what this is not for. So this is not like TikTok or Instagram where it's going to be a bunch of short videos. We're going to be here. It's going to be a full conversation, okay? A full lesson. Who today's class is for? This class is for highly motivated drummers who have a burning desire to achieve that next level of mastery, but are completely frustrated with their lack of progress and are actively searching for a better and faster way. So hopefully all you guys that are here with me in the chat, and of course all those students that you saw, that's the one thing that they all had in common. It's for drummers who not only want, but need to have that freedom of expression on the drums. Developing audiation. And I don't know how many of you, I think some of you are repeat offenders I've seen in the chat. So some of you probably know a little bit what I'm talking about when you talk about audiation, but we're going to go a little deep into that as we get going. Let's also just kind of squash some myths here as well. So there is no magic pill. My teacher, Kim Plainfield, who we are going to talk about later, he didn't beat around the bush. He said to me on lesson 1, listen, Jay, if you absolutely love the drums, then you should study them. But if you just like the drums, you should probably do something else. And he wasn't kidding, because drums could be frustrating. It's one of those instruments that's like, you got to love the puzzle. You got to love the journey. It's not just about the destination. It's about understanding and loving the practice. So if you're serious about the drums, this is going to be a full drum lesson. If you're not serious and you're not searching for the next level, then this class is not going to really do much for you. And I invite you to leave if that's the case, because I don't want to waste anyone's time. But I'm looking for the drummers that we're talking about. So if you're one of these drummers that are serious, put a 5 in the chat. We already got a whole bunch of 5s. You guys are a good bunch. Look at this. Crushing it. What's up, Raphael? I see you. I see you there. All right. Here's what we're going to cover. So I call them 3 secrets. All right. But it's just really 3 foundations that really changed my playing. 3 things that really made the difference. And if you get command over these 3 things, that's going to be it for you. You just got to get yourself in the right head for that. So secret number 1, the missing pieces in your fundamentals that's keeping you from becoming a rock star on drums. And it's not what you think. But these are the nuts and bolts. These are the technical things that people think about drumming the wrong way, and they start out from the wrong place. For example, I talk to so many of you online. We get into, a call or a class or something, and I say, what's your biggest struggle? And they'll say, oh, my paradiddles. I need to work on my paradiddles. Paradiddles might not be the thing that you need to work on because you don't understand these fundamentals, and that's what we're going to start with. Secret number 2, we're going to talk about how connecting these fundamentals to your mind and body are going to help you stop guessing. And that's the biggest thing. That's going to set you up for confidence when you're not guessing. I call it like taking the blindfold off, and all of a sudden you could see where you're going and you're not going to crash, right? Secret number 3 is, again, using that mind and body connection to develop a habit of practice where you practice smarter, not harder, and you start destroying that self-doubt because you start being prepared. So all these things are what's going to reshape your drumming. But before we get started, I want to kind of get to know what all of you are doing and what your situations are. So there are 4 categories of learning that most students have tried before they get to me. And I'd like to see where each of you kind of fit into that. So let's start there and let's talk about each thing. Who here's a self-taught drummer? Go ahead and put it in the chat if you're self-teaching right now. Put a 5 in the chat. Okay, so we got a bunch of them. Austin, Dan, Jeff, Gary, Andrew, Christy. Okay. So here's the good things about self-teaching. There's tons of information on YouTube, right? It's all at your fingertips. Challenge is it's time expensive. So teaching yourself, it takes up your time. It's like reinventing the wheel every single day. It also relies a lot on natural talent. So you do see guys that have done it. I know everyone always brings up Ellis Tapario Siberiano and, he was self-taught. I mean, the guy was he's got a very diligent attitude, but he knew what to go after, and then he just went after it every day. It's not impossible, but it is time expensive. The trick is to really make time work for you, not against you. Let's talk about traditional private drum lessons. This is where I lived for a very, very long time. And I know Tony does this too. Who's got a private teacher? Again, drop a 5 in the chat. Okay, cool. Private teachers are great. To me, that's one of the best ways you can do it because they're going to work with you. They're going to look at your unique situation and give you a plan of action. And that's a really awesome thing to have that. Here's the bad thing about private lessons, the most frustrating thing from the teacher's perspective. First of all, not all drum instructors are equal. That's one thing. Not everybody has the same level or is great at teaching. I've studied with guys that were not great players, but were amazing teachers. And I've studied with some famous guys that were amazing players that could not teach at all. So it's very weird finding the right teacher. It could be difficult. But the biggest challenge is the time gap in between lessons, where it's up to you to remember what the teacher said. You go home, when you're with the teacher, it's great, but you go home, then you're like, what was it that I practiced? How did I do it? And then you spend a week trying to remember what was going on, and you come back to the next lesson showing up with knowing only like 1/10 of what you were taught. And it's this whole 3-step forward, 2 steps back approach. And that's my biggest challenge with the private lessons. Let's talk about online courses. I'm talking about like your Drumios, your Mike's lessons, things like that. They give you structure. They show you what to work on. They give you a curriculum if they're good, if they're laid out properly. Who's doing that? Anybody have that? Go ahead and put a 5 in the chat if anyone's doing something like that. Gary said, yeah, that's me. Okay, good. Let's talk about the bad part of that. So the bad part of courses is that they'll give you a lot of accountability. So speaking from experience, because I had my own version of this same Drumeo type of system, and I'm not knocking Drumeo. Drumeo is great. It's a great resource. But it's an overwhelm of information, just like YouTube. There's so much there, it's hard to know what's important. And it's very tools focused. It's focused on all the tools, which is good. But as we're going to learn in this class, it's not just knowing what the tools are, it's knowing how to use them for what you're trying to do. And that's the most important thing. And that kind of gets lost a little bit in just online courses. Okay, let's talk about drum camps, mentorships, things like that. Has anyone done one of those, like a drum camp? Again, put a 5 in the chat if you're in that world. Jeff said 5. Okay. These are great. And I've been to many of these. I've taught a whole bunch of these. The challenge with these is it's quick. It's the same thing. A mentorship usually is done in a week. A drum camp could be a weekend. You get some one-on-one help, but all that information is crammed into a very short amount of time. I think one of my students said to me he went to the Todd Zuckerman drum camp or something like that, and he said it was amazing, but it was like sticking my head in front of a fire hydrant and turning it on, and all the information just hit him so hard. He's like, I can't remember any of the stuff that we talked about, even though I was wowed the whole time. So most people lose about 80% of what they're shown in a small course like this. To battle that, my first mentorship was actually 6 weeks. Ended up having to balloon out to 10 weeks because even 6 weeks wasn't enough time for everyone to really make a change. Does that make sense to everybody? I also want to talk about why I've gotten away from some of these things. So I wanted the students to have more clarity. I wanted students to have better results. My new teaching system gives that clarity. It takes the guesswork out of what's important to focus on. Accountability is the big thing. Getting you to show up every day and wanting to show up, not just showing up because you have to, showing up because you really want to do the work. You really want to get in there. It's exciting to you and you have a reason to show up every day. That's a huge thing. Not doing it by yourself. You know, when we're in the practice room working on it, you're like in a vacuum and it's lonely. It's a lonely world. So my new system brings all my students together, which is very unique. Something I've never done before, and doing it for the past year has been life-changing for everybody, including me. And the fact that it's not a catch-all system. In other words, we don't just have like a bunch of courses up there and it's like, go through the courses and apply them to you. The whole thing is like, great, once you know the tools, now we got to look at you personally and see how you fit into it. That's very, very important, and sometimes that gets lost in some of these other methods. My goal for today, by the end of this class, I want you to have clarity in terms of how to move forward with your playing, and that's whether it's with me or not. Studying the drums does take diligence. By staying till the end of this class, you're showing me that you have what it takes to be successful with your drumming. What does transformation look like? Let's get into it. Here's a couple of case studies that I have. These are guys from my first mentorship. And I just want to show you too, when you have this clarity, how much things can change. So let's take a look first at Stephanie. Her outcome was to get into a live band and be a professional in a drumming situation. But I want to show you where she came from. Self-teaching for about a year before she came to me. And this is a post that she did. Okay, so playing by ear, not bad. I mean, she showed me that video and I was like, okay. I'm like, it's not, especially for doing it on her own, it's really not bad. But of course, she was missing that confidence. Here's what she sounded like in the band that she got into right after she graduated from the mentorship. Check this out. So what do you guys notice right off the bat? I didn't even have to play that whole video. Can you guys see what I'm talking about? She found that balance. She found that confidence. She found the time. Everything is nice and locked in, and she's able to drive the band. You guys all notice that? Throw a 5 in the chat if you guys can recognize the change there. She sounds like a drummer. Yeah, she does. Not somebody that's just kind of playing by ear and noodling around. She sounds like a pro. Check out Stefan. Now, I want you guys to tell me what Stefan's issue was. Let's play this video and you tell me. What was the problem? Timing. Yep. Exactly. Not quite my tempo. We're going to talk about that too, Matthias. That's funny. Rushing, timing. Yes. So Stefan's biggest thing was time. Stephanie had an amazing natural sense of time. I didn't even have to touch it. She just naturally could feel it. Stefan couldn't. He's one of these students that didn't have that naturally. So we had to work on the audiation to the point where he could sing it and count it. And that's how his time started falling into line. Here's what he sounded like at the end. Totally crushing it. And the left foot is another thing. We worked really hard on getting that left foot in there on the things that he was doing. And his biggest thing, his version of Rockstar is just, putting out his journey on Instagram and TikTok and doing that kind of world. And okay, so if you want results like that, then I want you to pay attention. I need you to be present. If you're a drummer and you're serious about reaching that complete freedom of expression on the drums, this presentation can change your life, but only if you're here. You got to be here with me. You got to be present. You got to listen to what I'm doing. Wouldn't be a bad thing to take some notes. Again, I know this is kind of like webinar type of format, but just be present. So my name is Jay Fenichel. I'm at the Drummer's Almanac Online. Some of you probably know me from that. So I want to share with you some of the things I've learned just from being a pro drummer for the past 30 years. Back in 1998, I earned a BA in jazz performance from the SUNY Conservatory of Music at Purchase College in Westchester, New York. It's about 25 minutes north of New York City. And this really started my musical journey. Out of college, I was a touring drummer, and I realized touring is what I thought I wanted to do until I started doing it. And I know Tony could probably vouch for this also. Touring's not as glamorous as you think it is when you're not like in a big, giant band making millions of dollars. So it was fun, but I got over it pretty quick. But as a drummer, when I toured with some, my band Half Man Wonder and a couple of other sidemen projects, we opened for Dave Matthews, Sugar Ray, Derek Trucks, James Taylor, Seal. So we played some pretty big venues. But touring with that original band was a grind. Hours of traveling in vans, staying at those seedy motels, eating raw hot dogs for dinner. And the audiences a lot of times would turn on you because you're not like the main band. So it was hard. And we got really close with a couple of these bands. We got really close to that edge. But like everything, a lot of ducks have to fall in a row. So I eventually shifted to the wedding corporate thing because I needed to make a living. And I didn't want to be touring. I didn't want to be living in a van anymore. And that kind of grounded me a little bit. So I was teaching during the week and then doing the corporate stuff in the weekends. And basically, I built myself up through those ranks, eventually first as a sideman, and then I had my own bands, and then I joined a bunch of projects. And that kind of was my living for a long time. That's how I did it. Since the pandemic, that's when I got into social media. Because what happened during the pandemic was all those gigs just vanished. 100 weddings on the books just disappeared overnight. And it was like, oh no, what do I do? The good news is I was already teaching online. So I was already used to doing that. I'd made a move to Atlanta and I was already set up for that. So I was kind of good on that end, but I decided to get into the social media world just to kind of put myself out there a little bit. I started doing it. I started finally getting traction after a couple of years. So it wasn't like instant for me. It was a lot of work. And honestly, education really kind of became my new passion. I became obsessed with student results. That same feeling I'd get on stage playing in front of 20,000 people, I would get when one of my students would play their first gig. And I was like, man, I could do that and I could be home with my kids and not be driving all over the country or, traveling 7 hours to a wedding or something like that. So it definitely changed my thinking. But to really understand how I got to that point in my drumming career, I want to take you all the way back to the beginning. This is back when I was just a high school drummer. And I thought I was a big deal. In high school, I thought I thought I had it all together. I did all the things in school that were like the high school things, the talent shows, the pit bands, captain of the drum line, all that kind of stuff. And I was kind of famous in my school for the guy who plays drums. But I was hiding a secret from everybody. Even though I was taking lessons and doing all that stuff, I played everything by feel. And this is something that came to bite me in the butt later. So even though I practiced a lot of patterns, rudiments, had impressive sounding chops for a kid, I pretty much had no idea what I was doing. In other words, I would just feel my way through songs, solos, and performances. Who here does that now? Put a 5 in the chat if you're a feel person, if you feel it. Dan, anybody else have that issue where like you kind of feel your way through things? Austin, Gary, Jeffrey, Robert. Yep. Zach. Yep. And I listen, I know that feeling. I know that feeling really well. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And we're going to talk about that in more detail. But my dream was to be a pro drummer. I wanted to be like my heroes in the fusion world. I love Dave Weckl, Vinnie Colaiuta, Steve Smith, Steve Gadd, Dennis Chambers. I kind of grew to that. I mean, before that, I was an 80s rocker. I loved Queensryche. I loved, Guns N' Roses. I loved Bon Jovi. I love those were when I was first starting. That's kind of what I got into. Then eventually Rush and the progressive bands. And then that led to the fusion stuff for me. So I really worked hard to sound like some of these guys, but these guys don't feel it. And I didn't know that back then. So I thought my fundamentals were solid, but I was dead wrong. This came to a head at my college audition for music school. The stakes were really high. They told me that the jazz program was limited to 75 students, and they weren't really looking for drummers. They needed bass and I think trombone were the two things they were looking for. So at the audition, things were going okay. There was no serious problems, but I also wasn't standing out. You see, I was afraid to really play out because even though I had some fast sounding chops, I was hiding that secret. And I really didn't want to just, come out wrong after I did one of those crazy chops. And I was always guessing. It was always like 50-50. If I really went for it, maybe I'll come out right, maybe I won't. So I kept it real simple. Now, towards the end of the audition, the last thing they asked me to demonstrate was a trading fours over a jazz blues. You guys all know what trading fours is? Are you familiar with that? So it's like 4 bars at a time, 4 bars solo. And I was playing with the bass instructor. His name is Vishnu Wood. Big, burly bass player who's like old school. And I never played with a bass player like that. And this guy's going to accompany me. So, I'm super nervous. The first round, I kept it very simple. But when I glanced over at the teachers, what do you think they look like? And these aren't the teachers. This is just a stock photo. But they were very bored and unimpressed. So I knew I had to do something because they weren't really taking drummers. So if I didn't stand out, I was like, I'm just not going to get into the school. And that's the school I really wanted. It checked all the boxes for me. So for my last 4 bars, I decided to just go for it. I closed my eyes. I let go of everything. I turned on that feeling muscle and I just let it rip. I went crazy. To this day, I can't tell you what I did. I wish I had a recording of it. But I was flying around the drum set, pulling out every lick I knew as fast as I could possibly play it. Then suddenly, by the grace of God, an angel on my shoulder, I came around that drum set and bang, I nailed it right on the one. Right with Vishnu, we came right in together. And I was as surprised as everybody else, but their jaws were like on the floor. They couldn't believe what they just saw. They were like, I can't believe this kid just did that. And they thought I was pulling some crazy musicianship thing. Like I was like, I don't know, pool sharking them or something. They thought I was like, playing conservative the entire audition just to show them that very last thing and blow them out of the water. So they're like, the way you held back the whole audition and then you opened up at the end, it was like such maturity. And they were just like, they were blown away. And of course I was like, oh yeah, well, I meant to do that. They thought I was a drumming prodigy, so I got accepted. And that was, happy ending. Yay. But there's a problem there. Remember the secret. I had no idea where I was when I was playing those kind of things. So fast forward to my freshman year, I go to rep class for the very first time. Let me know in the chat what you think happened. What do you guys think happened when I showed up at rep class? You think I was able to duplicate that? that performance? Shows you didn't know what you were doing. Yeah, I did not know what I was doing. So when I tried to do that stuff, sometimes it came out, but sometimes it wouldn't. And they quickly realized that I had no idea what I was doing, that I didn't know where it was. That was completely inconsistent, and I wasn't that prodigy. So once they realized that, they were pissed, and they basically wanted me out of the program. But my grades were good, and I worked hard, so they couldn't just kick me out for no reason. I paid my tuition, but they did everything they could to try to get me to quit, basically. They felt like they had wasted one of those spots. And they figured if they could get me out by the next semester, they could still get somebody else in there, like for what they needed. This forced me to really reevaluate and break down my drumming to its barest essentials. I had to ask myself some very difficult questions and really look at those fundamentals. But when I did that, I started figuring out this powerful new method. And this is what we're going to talk about today. Applying this method each day, by my senior year, I had rebuilt myself to like the top drummer in the school. The same teachers who were trying to kick me out were calling me for gigs and sessions off campus. And I was like the hardest working student at the school at that time. But the real silver lining is I developed a system of teaching. I didn't know it at the time, but understanding how to rebuild my fundamentals, when I started sharing that with my students, that's when things really, really started to click and make sense for me. These were the fundamentals that I was forced to master. Now, I don't want any of my students to go through what I had to go through to learn that. So I try my damnedest not to have anybody be put in that same kind of position, because you shouldn't have to go through that much angst to get it. Ever since I graduated, I've been playing and teaching drums. That's 30 years of teaching, 40 years of playing all together. 2 years ago, with limits on how many private students I could take, that's when I started my first mentorship. I started getting so many calls for private lessons that I reluctantly did a 15 student mentorship. And that was like my first introduction to what I'm doing now. I call it my first pancake. But again, for the second time in my life, there was a big problem. I felt like the students on my website and my app and my mentorship and my private lessons, they weren't getting the results I believed that they could get. Some were doing well, but not everyone. And I didn't want to leave anybody behind. So I started working on a new system. We talked about some of these issues before, right? That brings us to today. And once again, I finally cracked that code. And I did that by taking the best parts of all of these systems, the private lessons, the mentorships, the courses, and I created something new. Now, my goal is to inspire you on what's possible and change the way you think about your drumming. That's the goal for today. And maybe a percentage of you would like to work together with me more closely, as we talk about this. But we're going to talk about that more later. I'm not going to get into that now. I just kind of want to plant the seed in your head a little bit because, this is a free class and that there is something at the end of the tunnel that I'd like to introduce you to if you might be a good fit for that. But before we do any of that, let's jump into some of this stuff. Now, I've shown all this stuff to you because I really need to impress upon you how valuable what you're about to learn is. If you focus on what I'm about to show you, it can change your life as a drummer. So are you ready to get into it? Let's just jump in. So the key to reaching the highest level of drumming lies in 3 words, and that's know your outcome. It's something I ask my students every single day is what's your outcome? I became a successful drummer by visualizing my potential and then executing a clear plan of action based upon my outcomes. I didn't know I was doing that, but when I started getting success, that was what it was. That's the thing that changed for me. So remember when I said in high school I wanted to be a rock star drummer? That was my motivation. Well, that was my ultimate outcome. But that's definitely evolved. It's changed over the years. So you want to start your drumming journey by having a crystal clear outcome. Think of it as if you're a pilot. The first thing you have to know is where are you going? Only then can you chart that flight plan, right? So let's go ahead and do that first. So let me know in the chat, and I want you guys all to put this in here. What's your dream outcome as a drummer? Where would you like to be? What would your flight plan look like? What does that ending destination look like for you? Do that for me right now. And let's make this really clear. Try not to make it general. Like for some people it might be, okay, performing on weekends. That's great. I remember for Glenn, he said it was being able to play Rosanna front to back. That was his main outcome. But for other people, it's something more like that. Like I want to be a working drummer. I want to be a pro. I want to be a teacher with, 30 students teaching. Yeah. And I said teaching. That's great. That's awesome. Playing confident with my band, mastering polyrhythms. I love that. You're like Dennis, steady work playing jazz. Okay. I always say being paid handsomely for playing and teaching. Yeah. I love it. Having a solid pocket. Okay. That's phenomenal. Because that's your beacon. That's the thing that you want to shoot for. If you don't have a thing that you're racing towards, you kind of just start flying in circles. And we don't want to do that. So let's start imagining what your life would be like if you had complete freedom of expression on the drums like some of the players you see online. Imagine if you could easily handle any musical situation or song that's thrown at you. Imagine if you could actually make a living, as a couple of people said here, through playing drums. If you could build maybe a giant social media platform. That's a big thing now. If you could book a full schedule of students, being a touring artist, for a famous singer or something, be a session drummer, record for people all over the world, or have a busy schedule as a club date, wedding, or a worship drummer. While you're doing that, I'm going to quickly show you some of my students that have used these methods to the fullest, and I just want you to take an idea of how this works. So first, this is my student PJ, my youngest student that's ever joined my program, and his main outcome was to get to Berkeley, which was a very clear outcome. He ended up doing it in 6 months. And not only that, but you can see here that he got into Berkeley and they gave him a scholarship, which is incredible. This is my student, Ben. Ben, I started when he was 7 years old. And I just wanted you to see what he sounds like because his band actually got the rock star thing. He got into the band and they started touring and it was a big national act. And here's what he sounds like. He also plays open-handed, which is pretty cool. That he's lefty on a righty kit. But he's obviously doing the metal thing, much better than I do it, to be honest. But that's that level of confidence that we're talking about. So how do we get results like PJ and Ben? Secret number 1, freedom of expression on drums breaks down to 3 simple categories of studies. I call these my whiplash fundamentals for somebody that referenced whiplash before. Why whiplash? Well, if anyone's seen the movie, right, I'm going to tell you about my very first drum lesson in college with Kim Plainfield. This was my whiplash moment. Kim was kind of like that Fletcher teacher for me. Wasn't as bad as Fletcher, but he was intimidating. So anyone that knows Kim knows he was a tough instructor. And in my first private lesson with him in college, he asked me to trade 4s. So right back to like what I did in my audition. So thinking I'd impress him, I tried a bunch of those things that I tried in my audition, just to be like, wow, look how fast I am. The difference was Kim was a seasoned pro and he was able to see through it right away. So after I was done, I looked up at him. He looked back at me. He hung down his head. And after an awkward long pause, he literally said, okay, don't you ever effing do any of that ever again. And I had never had a teacher curse to me like that before. I was like 18 years old and he was like this big, famous, intimidating guy. So it like literally sent chills down my spine when he said that to me. So I was like, what? What did I do wrong? And he said, everything, all of it. For example, that last thing you played, what rhythm was that, Jay? To which I replied, it was a double paradiddle. And he was like, no, not double paradiddle. That's a sticking. I want to know what rhythm you played. So we kept on going back and forth a couple of times this way. And he's getting madder and madder and angrier and angrier. Finally, he said to me, okay, the lesson's over. Next week, I'm going to come here and I'm going to ask you what rhythm you played. And if you can't give me the right answer, we're done. I'm going to drop you as a student and you're going to fail private study. And I don't think you should be a drummer. That's what he said to me on my very first lesson. So, being crushed aside, I started asking myself that question. What is rhythm? What is Kim really looking for? So who could answer that question? Now, I know some of you have been to this class before. So if you know the answer because you've been to the class before, let somebody else answer that might not have been. All right. So in the chat right now, what was Kim looking for when he was asking me for what is rhythm? Speed, regularity. Okay. Yeah. That's actually not terrible. We could probably land the plane on that a little bit, but yeah. Okay. So that's pretty close. Structured repeated patterns. That's close too. Yep. Structured repeated patterns is close. 8/16. 16ths. Okay. Now we're starting to nail it. Sherry's starting to get it here. Okay. So what are we talking about? So it's not wrong. So when you talk about what is rhythm, rhythm is these notes. So Sherry, when you said 8th notes, 16th notes, yes, those are rhythms. Now what happens is people kind of conflate beat, the time, the count, the feeling of the time as a rhythm. That person's got great rhythm that when they dance. And that is a layman thing. That's a person that's not a musician. But when you're a musician, when we talk about the rhythm, we're talking about the notes. So somebody else that said, beat irregularity or no, structured repeating patterns, that is what notes are, right? If you define a note, isn't it like repeating patterns that are structured inside of the beat? That's what rhythm is. But to keep it really simple, everyone knows what a note is. So rhythms are your quarter notes, your 8th notes, your 16th notes, all that stuff. So what Kim was looking for was 16-note triplets. That's what he wanted me to say. And it's amazing to me to this day how many students don't know that. It's the first thing I ask everybody, and everybody drops the ball. I think 5 students in the past 30 years have ever gotten that right, and they were all teachers already. So it's one of those things that really opened up my world once I understood that. So if rhythms are the notes that you play over the beat, how does changing the rhythm impact the sound to the listener? And again, let's do that in the chat. Somebody even touched on it already. So what does the listener get out of you changing the rhythms? Timing and dynamics is what Raffaele said. Yeah, I mean, dynamics, not really, not necessarily. Dynamics would be loud and soft, and we will talk about that. As far as timing, feel, okay, now we're getting woo-woo. Different feel, different tempo. Well, and that's interesting that you say that, Dan, different tempo, because your job as a drummer is not to change the tempo, right? So how do we not change the tempo, but make it sound like we're changing the tempo? The mechanism for that is rhythm. Okay, so that's exactly what rhythm does. Rhythm makes it sound like you're playing faster versus slower without changing the beat of the time. Something that I got from John Riley, he called it elasticity. Makes it sound like you're elastic, but you're keeping the tempo, the time and the beat which is not something you play, right? The time is 1, 2, 3. We count that. And then we play the rhythms, the notes on top of that. And by changing those rhythms, it sounds like it's faster or slower. That's the mechanism that you're developing when you develop rhythm. So what's happening there? Because it's as I'm going through the different note values, it sounds like it's speeding up over and over again. That's the secret. That's what it's doing for you. But you have to know all of those notes so well. You have to know them like you know your name. So that's the first place we usually start, is getting those rhythms really dialed in. And that would be our first secret. It's playing again, but that's okay. All right, good. So to the listener, it sounds like you're elastic. It sounds like you're going fast versus slow, but the time remains constant. This is one of, if not the most important thing to understand about drumming, everybody. As a drummer, you have to be a master of this. And if you're not, if you can't count the rhythms, if you don't know what rhythms you're using, if you're playing and you're just feeling it, that's not happening. And that's the biggest problem. That's what I was doing wrong. So let's take it a little bit deeper and get a little bit into the second fundamental here. Accents. This one's a little more cut and dry. So if I was asked somebody in the chat what are accents, and somebody said it before when they talked about dynamics. So what's an accent? This should be pretty easy. There's no trick question here. Hard, soft. Thank you, Sherry. Very good. So accents are hard, loud, and soft, right? But once again, the real question is, when you apply accents to the drums, what does your audience hear? What does your audience get out of the accents? Let me know in the chat. So same question as before. Yes, your audience does hear loud and soft, but there's a mechanism here that sometimes gets lost when you start studying accents. In other words, you got to know why. Can you guys see what I'm doing here? Instead of just talking about the tools that are important, you got to know why. Because if you don't know why, then you don't really have a reason to practice it. Different feel. Yeah, yes, but that answer could answer everything, right? Everything's a different feel. Changing the rhythm gives you a different feel. Changing the accents gives you a different feel. The melodic rhythm. Okay, Elroy's touched on. He said the word right there. And that's what I'm low. Audience hears melody. That's what Jim said. And that's correct. That's what we're looking for. So the answer is melody. Manipulating accents creates melody inside of the rhythm, the notes that you're playing. So how do we do that? Let's take a look at that. Okay, so this is a very simple demonstration of how accents equals melody. So if I was to play a very simple rhythm and just hold it like this, notice it doesn't sound like anything, right? But watch what happens if I add a layer of accents on top of it. Now, were you able to recognize the song that I was playing there? What song is that? Wipeout. Robert got it right away. You see? So the second I added a melody to it, you guys all knew the song. And you didn't even need the guitar part because the accents provided melody. And you can use that. That's going to hook your audience. If you're going to understand how to take a simple rhythm, you could go through an entire drum solo just by creating melody without changing anything else. The other thing that's great about accents is they also teach you how to set up and get your touch together. So from a technical place, they're a very valuable thing to understand and learn. Because getting those accents to be clear, that's a whole nother can of worms. So accents hooks the audience with melodies that they can latch onto. This is how you can coast through a drum solo and never sound boring. Let's talk about number 3. Whiplash fundamental number 3 is sticking. So what is sticking? Go ahead. Someone tell me definition of sticking. Now, just as a hint, sticking is what I focused on for the first 10 years of my drumming. It's what you hear when you go on YouTube and people start showing you really cool things. Patterns. Austin said it. Yeah, yes, patterns more specifically. So let's get into specifically when Austin says patterns. Patterns are not rhythms. And this is where we get confused. People think of a paradiddle as a rhythm. It's not a rhythm. It's a sticking. So what is it? It's rights and lefts. Now on the drum set, that also includes feet. It also includes sound sources, orchestration, moving around the drums. Now, yes, just by orchestrating with stickings, you're going to get a different sound because different drums have different sounds. But if you were to keep everything on the same surface and keep it really simple, just playing on a snare drum, what does your audience hear as you change the stickings? So let me know again in the chat. By changing the stickings, assuming we're just doing it on the snare drum, one pattern on the snare drum, rhythm's the same, accents are not happening, or maybe the accent pattern is the same, but we change the sticking. What does the audience get? Let's see if anyone gets it. Everything sounds the same. That's the right answer. Okay. In other words, the audience doesn't necessarily get anything from it. So why do it? Why do we all practice sticking so much? Why do we all practice rudiments? Things like that. What's the point? Why are we doing it? So it's a bit of a trick question because, if your stick control is solid, the listener doesn't hear any difference, right? So the reason for developing sticking is to make the job of playing drums easier. Changing the stickings allows you to play rhythms and accents faster and in a more relaxed way. Think of like doubles versus singles. I could play singles fast, but it's very physical. I could play doubles the same speed, and it's half the energy. It's half the effort. So let's watch this quick lesson on sticking. So that the sticking allowed me it gave me a little bit more of a flow. Do you notice that? Versus playing single strokes, which is also a sticking. I mean, it's not that I didn't do a sticking the first one. It's still a sticking. But the single strokes have more like ferocity to them. They're more physical and you feel that. So someone talked about changes the feel. Sticking is very much a feel thing. And when you change the sticking, even though it doesn't necessarily change the sound to the listener, that much, they will hear the difference in feel just because it'll flow smoother. It'll feel more relaxed if you use a sticking in the way it's meant to be used, which is to make it like more comfortable to get around the kit. And unfortunately, this is where so many drummers get stuck. This is the thing that they focus on because sticking is like the icing on the cake. But rhythm and accents, that's the cake. That's this thing that people don't really put enough effort into, and they just sit on YouTube and look, right, left, kick, right, left, kick, right, kick, left, kick, right. And that's the thing that they practice over and over again, the pattern. And you could get that to roll. You could get that to go really fast. But without understanding the audiation, understanding what rhythm structure you're using, it falls apart. And again, going back to my feeling in college, that's what I was doing wrong. I had a lot of patterns together, but I didn't know anything about rhythm. At least it wasn't connected. And we're going to talk about that next. Okay, let's talk about what this looks like and you apply all three of these together. I'm just going to play a quick solo that I did. This is about 10 years ago. I do have hair. So, the idea. So you see how I'm using all three of those things. If you notice, the left foot is going, there's time happening, right? The band is playing a vamp underneath what I'm doing. I'm able to make it sound fast. I'm able to go slow. There's accents, there's melody, there's these static licks that sound impressive. I'm putting all that stuff together. And once you own it, you can just speak. And that's what it turns into. But at the end of the day, that's really it. I mean, so if you master those two things, you pretty much are a master drummer, which is crazy to think about it. And when I realized that, that's when things really started to come together for me. So are we on the same page? Does everyone understand how to bridge some of these techniques together? And is it comforting to know that there's only really 3 technical elements that you have to focus on when it comes to technique? We see all these millions of videos all over the internet telling us all these different things. But if you really get to the bare bones, if you really get to the least common denominator, these 3 things are the things that you need to ask yourself every single time you go to learn something. What rhythm is it? What are the accents? And how am I sticking it? And once you understand those 3 things comfortably, technique is handled. Now, that sounds simple, but this is just to help you cut through all the noise on the internet. Does that help everybody? Does that give you guys a little bit more structure in terms of what's important? Now, I hope you're getting excited, because that's only the first secret, is just understanding those 3 fundamentals. You got to do something else, because you can't just live there. So let's talk about secret number 2. This is how we connect our mind and body with these 3 fundamentals that we just talked about, so we stop guessing. And this is going to set you up for confidence on the drums. You can't be a rock star on the drums if you don't have confidence. And 90% of confidence happens up here. What do drummers like Tony Williams, Steve Gadd, Dave Weckl, Neil Peart, Jeff Porcaro, Steve Smith, what do they all have in common? Let me know in the chat. We talked about this a little bit before. They're monsters. Yeah. So what makes them monsters? Confidence makes them monsters. But where does their confidence come from? Where does that confidence come from? What do you guys think? Where does the confidence come? And I know some of you are going to say practice. Yeah. I mean, sure. Skills. Okay. Where do the skills come from? We keep on asking that question until we get to that least common denominator. That's the same for all of them. The thing that they have all in common is one word: audiation. And this is a relatively new music term. It's only maybe about 10 years old or so where somebody's kind of coined that. I didn't call it audiation when I was younger. I called it being connected. That was my definition. That's what I told students. But when I started reading up on audiation, I started this teacher who invented this term is outlining all the stuff that we're talking about here right now. And I realized, wow, I'm already doing this and teaching it. And it was nice to have like a structured thing that I could tie it to for my students. So what is audiation? Well, let's look it up. Okay, so if you Google it, audiation says it's the ability to hear and understand music in one's mind, even when the music is not physically present. It's like thinking in musical terms, similar to how we think in language. It involves comprehending the sound, rhythm, and tonality of music and being able to mentally manipulate and predict musical elements. Now, that sounds very fee-fee-fa-fo, right? So what does that mean in layman's terms? Think of it like when you're reading a book, how you can clearly hear and comprehend the words in your mind without physically saying them, right? It's doing that, but with music. And we develop this through counting, singing, and movements, dancing. Luckily, drummers do all 3 of those if you're studying. You know, if you play a trumpet, dancing is a little harder to do. Counting is a little harder to do because you're blowing into something. You're using your mouth, right? So audiation means something a little different if you're a trumpet player versus a drummer. But luckily, we have that freedom to do all of those things, and it's kind of our main deal, right? But we have to tap into it. So in secret number 1, we talked about the 3 fundamentals: rhythm, accents, and sticking. But just knowing them is not enough. We have to audiate them as well. That means your mind and body have to be connected when you're playing the drums. And what the heck does that mean? Well, we talked about this before, but once again, who here is a just feel it drummer? Be honest. Who here is just like, I just feel it. I sit down and play and my head kind of goes to outer space and I just feel it. And sometimes I'm surprised by the things I'm doing. I do something cool. I'm like, whoa, that was cool, but I can't duplicate it. Right. So a few: Dan, Austin, Ariel. Yeah. And that's a common thing. That's how I was for the first 10 years of my playing before college. And people kind of like maybe make it a flex. Oh, that's okay. I could just feel it. That ain't a flex. All right. That's not something to brag about, because basically just feeling is the same thing as guessing. Okay. So if you don't know you're a just feel it drummer, have you ever just said to someone, you know, I don't have to count, I could just feel it. Right. And I'm sure we've all done that. When we talk about drummers that have a great feel, notice that's feel as a noun. That means they have great balance, they have rock solid time, confidence in where they are in their time, and they have musical intelligence. They know when and where to put certain things in certain ways In other words, they're audiating when they play. So all those drummers that I talked about, the Steve Gadds, the Dave Weckels, the Vinnies, they're audiating. And that's why they sound the way they sound. That's why they have that confidence. So when a drummer says, I'm feeling it, notice that feel as a verb. You don't want I'm feeling it as a verb. You want to have a great feel as a noun. Those are two different things. So we don't want to be guessing. Guessing or just feeling it is the opposite of audiation, and that will kill your feel. So I just want to make that clear, especially for someone in the chat that said they wanted to be a pocket drummer. They want to have a great pocket and great sense of time. You don't want to just feel it. You got to know it. And that balance has got to be there. Check out my student, Adam. This is when he started developing initially started developing audiation.
It's, it's so funny because I've worked on this stuff in the past, but until I started working with you, I never counted. Never.
Right.
So I'm noticing that, man, I really don't have it as together as I thought I did. When you actually start trying to audiate these things, it's
right.
I'd heard from teachers and stuff.
Right.
Count, but like, all right, what does that really mean when you actually get into the nitty gritty of it?
Right.
Like the way you teach it, it's so much different.
Yeah.
And it's needed. When I actually did start to run a lot of the stuff, the grouping thing that I had been practicing before through counting and audiation, it just gets so much more solidified in you.
Okay, so this is an exercise that Adam did for his second jury. He's actually a year into my program now. And he's actually my first student, to brag on him a little bit, who's ever been through Gary Chafee's Rhythm and Meter book, which somebody here talked about polyrhythms. That is the Bible of polyrhythms. And I've never had a student get front to back. I've had a couple of students get about halfway. He did the whole book in like 4 months, which is absolutely astounding. But because he loves the audiation. Now, notice he talked about counting and audiation. They're not exactly the same thing. Just because you count doesn't mean you audiate. Counting is a tool for developing audiation. We would get into that a little bit more deeply. But is everyone starting to get a clearer idea of what audiation is? Tony wrote down audiation is everything from boom, boom, bam to boots and cats and all the way up through the one end to two end. Exactly. So it doesn't have to be one end to two end. Some people don't count like that. Some people takadimi. That's fine too. You can audiate that way. It's a different language, but as long as your mind is connected to it, that's what you're going for. And using those languages helps you develop that and helps you find that. Now, to be clear, audiation is not just being able to count. That's what I just said, right? All the counting is happening while all the playing is clear in your mind. You have to be connected to the music you're making. Your mind is leading your hands, not the other way around. And if you're honest with yourselves, how many of you are doing that, where your hand is leading your mind? You're listening to what you're playing after the fact. It shouldn't be like that. Your head should be the leader. Your head should be the conductor and your hand should be the orchestra. And that's how I want you guys to start thinking about this. Audiation is also not just reading music. Reading music is a great tool, but it's not a requirement. There's plenty of musicians that audiate and don't know how to read Western music. However, if you're taught reading, it's an amazing tool to connect your mind to something. It's just like language. Like you could speak a language without knowing how to read, but being able to read gives you access to so much more. And that's what we have to tap into if you're studying. So don't sleep on reading. Okay. So what was this? Oh, this was us talking.
Well, when the tempo slows down and your audiation changes, that's a metric modulation. That's a full-on modulation. Okay. When the tempo stays.
Okay, so just for context, in this video, Mike and I, Mike is a teacher. He's a little bit more advanced. So we are just talking about the audiation side of it. And this just so you understand the language of what we're saying. I just want you to show you kind of how it feels when two drummers are speaking that language.
It's the same, but you just sound like you're playing inside it. Like that exercise I was doing that Adam was talking about in accountability today. It sounds like I'm at a different speed.
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking 1, 2, I'll count it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Let's see, extra points. What am I demonstrating there? What are Mike and I talking about? What's the technique? Does anyone know it? Not Tony, you're not allowed to say. Does anyone know what I just did right there? And I was counting it through, so I knew where it was, but it sounded like I went to a completely different outer space tempo. Elroy got it. Metric modulation. That's what we're talking about. And we're using audiation to make sure we know where we are while we're doing that. Okay? That's the difference. So are we clear what audiation is? Let's review. Can you see how first knowing these fundamentals are the most important thing? You got to know the fundamentals. If you don't know what to do, then you're stuck, right? But you don't really own the fundamentals until you can audiate them. And that takes a lot more understanding. So throw a 5 in the chat if you're getting clearer on what this is. Yeah, I got the prize. You definitely do. That was good. Okay, a lot of 5s. Looking great. Okay, excellent. Okay, are you ready for secret number 3? Let's jump into it. How developing the fundamentals, getting your audiation together, will help you practice smarter, not harder, and help you destroy the self-doubt that's been holding you back your entire drumming career. Because it's the biggest thing that I hear, guys, is especially when we're older, like older students, not kids. Kids don't have this issue, but older students, they put all kinds of mental roadblocks in front of their playing. And if you tell yourself enough times that you can't do something, guess what? You're right, right? You convince yourself. So the third killer of somebody's drumming confidence and achieving that rock star level is their own blocks that they throw in front of it. So we got to talk about that. Do you find yourself thinking or saying things like, I'm too old, or I started too late to master the drums? I have an injury. I got carpal tunnel surgery or something, and I don't have the physicality of some of these young guys that are doing it. Or maybe I'm a young guy and I'm not as fast as this person because I have some kind of, physical limitation. I don't have natural talent like some famous guys that I see, or I have imposter syndrome. I want to put myself out there. I want to go to the open mic. I want to sit in, but I don't think I'm good enough to do that. I'm not good enough to put a video on YouTube. Put a 5 in the chat if you've ever thought of any of this stuff. That would be me. This is what Patricia said. Dan, 3-4. Dan, Christy, Patricia, Sherry, Matthias, Richard. Yeah. Okay. So this is one of those things. Let me show you. This is my student, Glenn, who's, again, one of my favorite people on the earth. Glenn is 73 years old this year and kicking ass. I just want you to hear from Glenn.
I'm Glenn Hamilton. I started working using TDA for practice about a little over 3 years ago. I consider it one of the best investments, if not the best investment that I ever made in my drumming. You can do a lot of things, but Jay teaches you how to practice. The mentorship for me, because I'd been playing for over 2 years using TDA and subsequently studied the drum.
So Glenn didn't study before my mentorship. He just took he was on my app, it was a website. TDA is the Drummer's Almanac, and hence he's got the shirt right there. Which is pretty funny because he did this video for me a couple of years ago. But yeah, so he didn't really take any lessons. He was completely self-taught before just doing my website. And then when I did my mentorship, that's when I really kind of, met him and started working with him a little bit more closely. And now, of course, he's in my full mastermind program as well. And he's a worship drummer, 73 years old. He plays every week and he's the leader of his worship band. And 2 years before that, he was a beginner. He'd never done anything. And so, to imagine starting at like 70 years old and deciding I'm going to be a great drummer.
I went from being a mediocre intermediate level drummer to being a very high intermediate level to almost a top level drummer.
And that's Glenn's journey. Now, what about an injury? Nobody has any excuse for anything when you see a couple of people in my program, guys like Angelo. Now, Angelo has been struggling with he's in a brace right now. Unfortunately, he's having more issues now with his right hand. He had carpal tunnel surgery that kind of messed up his hands a little bit. They went in there and they alleviated pain, but there was no consideration for this whole pulley system in I think it was his right hand that he had it done, or it might've been his left hand. I don't remember which one, or it might be both. But in the beginning, it was so bad that he couldn't hold a pair of drumsticks. Now, right now, he's back at that level. He's a year into my program, but he's been practicing so much that it's been bothering his hand again. So he's back in a brace. But could I tell you, even him in a brace, and Tony could vouch for this, Angelo's still practicing every single day with just his left hand, and his right hand's in a brace, and his feet. And he's working on his audiation, and this is him on a Sunday where they're not, I tell everyone they don't have to practice on Sundays. You should take a day and rest. But Angelo does not rest. Now, Angela's a quintessential just feel it drummer when he first started with me, but no one is more serious about audiation than this guy. And he is the heartbeat of my group. He is the one that pushes everybody to practice, because even when it hurts, even when it's, it's not happening, he's in there every single day doing it. So that's what I mean by if you have a physical issue, and I know a lot of guys have had a lot of bad cards dealt to them, there's always a way around it. There's always a way to go through it. You just got to want it. And if you want it, there's always a way. So don't let that stop you. And don't tell yourself, oh, well, I'm never going to be this or that just because of my age or, an injury. What if you don't have natural talent? So here's the myth about natural talent. It's true that some people will develop faster. That's going to happen. But in all my years of teaching, less talented students that end up mastering their fundamentals, they always end up outpacing a talented person who didn't. And that's because they're coachable and things never came easy to them. So they're accustomed to pushing forward. Does that make sense to everyone? So sometimes natural talent, believe it or not, it could be a handicap. Because what happens with those guys is that they get to that point of the ceiling. The natural talent kind of runs out and now they got to work and they don't know how to. So the trick, and listen, if you're talented and you work hard, that's even better. But it doesn't really matter how talented you are if you know what it's important to you and you want it, and then you just start going after it a little bit every day. Just get yourself in that mindset and stop defeating yourself. Imposter syndrome. This is the big one that I often hear from students. So let me tell you a little secret. Everybody, even the best drummers in the world, struggle with some kind of imposter syndrome. It's everybody. So everyone know Dave Weckl? One of my favorite drummers like of all time. It's like the turtle thing. That's everybody said yes. It's very much like the turtle and the hare, right? That whole story. It's very much like that. So I saw Dave just recently at PASIC, but this was years ago. I saw him at a drum clinic. And he absolutely crushed a really crazy play along track in front of about 500 drummers. It was he always sounds amazing. In a room full of drummers, everyone's waiting for him to make a mistake, but one guy raised his hand and said, "Dave, can I ask you a question?" He said, "Sure." He's like, "Do you ever get nervous playing in front of a room full of drummers?" And Dave said, "Yeah, man, I'm nervous every single time, but I'm more prepared than I am nervous." And that's the magic formula. Being more prepared than you are nervous, because you're never going to be not nervous. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be way down in your belly when you got to go play. Anytime. It still happens to me. Still happens to every person I know. But the more prepared you are, the more you're able to meet that. And if you're really good, you can take those nerves, you could take those feelings and bring it into your performance. And that's when you really know you got it together. So how do we get prepared to that level? 3 words, and we're going to come full circle here. Know your outcome. Remember I said that right in the beginning of all this? You got to know what you're shooting for. You got to begin with the end in mind. And once you have that ending, then we can get very clear in our heads where we'd like to end up as a drummer in a month, in a week, and even at that daily level. Then you let that daily outcome tell you exactly what you need to practice. And it's just taking that step every single day. And if you have that, then that's it. That's how you turn into a master drummer like Dave Weckl. It's a house of cards, stacking one card at a time, being very patient and doing each thing, noticing, focusing on that outcome, breaking it and fixing it. And it always comes back to those 3 whiplash fundamentals that we talked about. At the end of the day, what tool do I need to do to fix this thing that I'm trying to do? But it's not enough to know what. You also need to create that why. There's got to be some kind of urgency and focus. So let's imagine that I'm your teacher, and in a lesson I gave you some kind of rudiment to practice, some kind of page of stick control or something like that. And the only reason to practice that was because I told you it was important. Let me know in the chat, scale of 1 to 10, how prepared would you be for my next lesson? And this is something I usually ask as an exercise for people that I have calls with also. So Austin said a 4. Now gauge by if you have a private teacher. I mean, is there times that you're always prepared? Okay. Robert said 3. Raphael said 5. Dan said 6 or 7. Okay, 6, 7. Oh, I'm sorry. I have kids. Okay, same scenario. Let's imagine I'm your teacher. But I call you up and I say, listen, I got a wedding on Saturday. It pays $1,000. I need you to cover for me. And you only have a week to learn the entire show. You can't say no. Now, same question, scale of 1 to 10. How much are you going to be prepared for that gig in a week? Austin said 10. Ariel said 10. Okay. Now, Dan said, and Sherry said 8. I would even argue with that because, like, again, if you know you have to play that gig and you know you have to show up, you know the stakes of that gig, I believe that you're going to practice like 10 times harder than you ever would. So what's the difference in those two scenarios, right? Patricia said 5, I'm a beginner. Again, this is assuming we've worked together and you know how to do it. So even if you're a beginner, that's okay. Now, what if there's a way to dial in that same kind of urgency, right? Because that's the difference there. The difference is urgency. You don't want to disappoint me as a teacher. That's a little bit of urgency. You don't want to show up unprepared to a gig in front of people and in front of a band. That's paying. That's a different level of urgency. So now it turns into, how could I create a little bit of that urgency every single day in my practice? If I could put a why behind it, now the things that you're practicing aren't just mundane things that you're doing. You have a reason. You're going to post it. You're going to show it to somebody. You're going to perform it. That's going to create a different thing. Everyone recognize that? So if you could find a way to build that into your playing, that's key. Let's talk about my teacher, Frank. I think I might have mentioned him earlier. I'm going to tell you a quick story about Frank. One of my favorite lessons with Frank. Now, I don't know if anyone knows Frank Bellucci. Does anyone ever see him? He was on Drumeo last year. Phenomenal drummer from out of Long Island, New York. Just one of these guys that should be way more famous than he is. Just a real weekend warrior who just probably plays 5-6 nights a week, every single night. If he doesn't have a gig, like he freaks out. Like he's got to fill his calendar with gigs. And even if it's just like in the local pub playing for $75, which is a crime because he's right up there with all the greats as far as I'm concerned. He's an amazing drummer. But my favorite lesson with him, I showed up, he was late and he drove up like 5 minutes after I got there. I'm sitting by the front door and he was running. He was out for his daily run. So he was all sweaty, he's in his jumpsuit. And I'm like, he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm running a little late for my run. I wanted to squeeze it in. So we started talking about running. So I said to him, how long have you been running, Frank? And he said, I've been running, for about 5 or 6 years now. I said, really? So you weren't always a runner? He said, no, absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I used to be a fat guy. It's exactly what he said to me. And he's got this real Italian, like Long Island accent. He even brought out a wedding picture and showed me. And he's like, look what I look like back at my wedding. And sure enough, he was a fat guy, which was a little jarring to see him like that. He said to me, I always struggle with my weight, Jay. I'm Italian. I love my bread and pasta. But one day I was talking to another student of mine who's in great shape. So I asked him, I said, what's your secret? And he told me that he had no weight loss secret, Frank. I'm just a runner. I've been running since high school and I've been running my whole life. And runners tend to not be fat. So in that moment, Jay, you know what happened? I just made a decision to become a runner. And I've been a runner ever since. I don't miss a day. And a couple of years later, I looked in the mirror and one day I was no longer a fat guy. Who'd have thunk? You know why? Because runners aren't fat. And drums works like that too. So instead of focusing on a goal, find out what's important and then nurture that habit each day. So that's the secret. And I was like, wow, that was one of the most profound drum lessons I ever had. I remember asking Steve Smith, what do you do every day? What's your practice? You still practice? And Steve Smith said to me, stick control every day, half hour, non-negotiable. I get a cup of coffee, I put it on my stand, I open up a page of stick control, I set my metronome, and I do a half hour stick control every single day. I am the drummer that does stick control every day. And if you know Steve Smith's hands, you know what we're talking about, right? So again, having a clear path and outcome, then learning to nurture the habit, that's what's going to make you prepared. And that will overshadow all personal insecurities. If you guys take one thing away from this class, and I want everyone to go ahead and take a screenshot of this, having a clear path and outcome, then learning to nurture that habit will make you prepared. And that will overshadow all personal insecurities. No matter how old you are, no matter how injured you are, no matter how much imposter syndrome you have, none of that matters if you just become the drummer that does these things every day. So you guys, can you all agree with me that after this class, you guys are all going to become that drummer? That's what I want to see. Throw a 5 in the chat if you're ready to do that. Okay. Austin said, Sherry is. Dan, Robert. Great. That's what I want to see. Okay, now I spent between 6 to 10 hours of practice, working in college on the tools of drumming, but that's not a flex. That's not a good thing. I don't want anyone practicing 6 to 10 hours a day. I think that's a recipe for burnout. It's because I didn't know how to practice effectively, so I threw a lot of time at it. I had the time. Tons of trial and error, tons of reinventing the wheel. I didn't know what was important, so I just practiced all day. Now, I did have great private teachers, but the private teachers didn't always give me the clarity in knowing what was really important or how to practice those things effectively. But once I started really asking these questions and I started formulating what I'm teaching you here, that's when the magic started to happen. So let's just do a little review here. Step 1 is to know the whiplash fundamentals. Got to get those down. Step 2 is to develop your audiation and connect your mind and body to those fundamentals. Step 3, having an outcome, creating urgency, streamlining your practice to meet those outcomes, then nurture that habit and repeat that process every single day. That is the magic formula, everybody. And if you can do that every day, and you do it every day for years, you're Dave Weckl, you're Steve Smith, you're Dennis Chambers. Make sense? Now, don't forget, at the end of this class, I'm going to be giving everyone a free workshop and a couple other goodies. So we're getting there. Okay, here's what we've covered so far. Secret number 1, we talked about freedom of expression boils down to these 3 whiplash fundamentals: mastering rhythm, accents, and sticking, and understanding what each one of those does. Rhythm makes it sound faster and slower. Accents gives you melody. Sticking is ease of execution. Those are the 3 fundamentals from technique. Secret number 2, you need to develop the audiation. Connect your mind and body to these fundamentals. Secret number 3, knowing your outcome, then nurturing your habit, and that's going to make you prepared. Being prepared will overshadow any kind of limiting beliefs that you have. Notice this has nothing to do with how old you are. Okay, so anyone's saying I'm too old for this. Tony Williams played with Miles Davis after only playing drums for like 4 years. He started like 13, and by 17, he was playing with Miles. So it's not about age, and it's not about how long you've been playing. It's about focusing on the right things. So if you could dial all that stuff in, you now understand what it takes to become a rock star on the drums. Hopefully, you've also discovered some of the roadblocks that's stopping you. Has that happened to anybody? Have you guys realized that? I'm seeing a lot of 5s in the chat, which is good. You guys are starting to know the workflow of this class. Good. I'm seeing it. So it's all about clarity and what's important, connecting your mind to that, knowing your outcome, and nurturing the habit. Repetition. I say this stuff a lot because I find that repetition is the mother of skill. That's the way to get good at something. So let me ask you a question. Are you enjoying the class thus far? Just throw a 5 in the chat if you guys are getting something out of this. Hopefully you are. And again, I'm seeing a lot of 5s, which is great. Was our time together thus far enjoyable to you? Have you found it valuable? Good. Do you feel more comfortable on how to get to that rock star confidence more now than before you joined the class? Have you come up with some ideas and feel excited about implementing some of this into your own drumming? Is it fair to say that using these techniques, it would give you a significant advantage over some maybe other people that haven't taken a class like this? Are you happy you watched today? That's the only thing that's important to me, right? You're spending all this time with me. I want to make sure you guys get something out of this. Now, you could take everything that I shared with you today and use that to change your drumming for the better, and I want everyone to do that regardless. I have confidence that after our time together, you'll know what's important. You have a clearer path. And it's a path that you probably previously didn't think about before. And if that were your only option, that would be awesome. That would be fine. But what if there was another option? What if there was an option that allowed me and my team to serve you at a higher level, a chance to go deeper than we could in one short class right here, right? What if I had more responsibility to your success, more of an obligation to helping you get the results you want? And that I believe you also deserve, especially if you're here and you're with me this whole time. If I had such an option for you, would you guys like to hear more about it and what it could do for you? Throw a 5 in the chat. That's why, with great pleasure, I'd like to introduce to you the Study the Drums Inner Circle Mastermind. This is the program I talked about in the beginning of this class. And this is my solution on how to get drummers to really dial in everything we just talked about in this class. I built this whole program around the ideas that we just talked about. So it's not just a course. It's not just a bunch of lessons. And it's not just one-on-one lessons with me. Time with me is almost irrelevant. But if you're going to spend time with me, I want to make sure it's dialing in the things that you're learning and make sure you're staying on that course, because that's the most important thing. The concepts and methods I've shown you today, they kind of scratch the surface. You still got to do it. And the work is work. You know, it's not for everybody. Just like Kim Plainfield said, you got to love it. So let's talk about who this is for. So this is for serious drummers, guys that are all in on their drumming and absolutely must change right now. Drummers who are not afraid of putting in the work because there's no shortcuts. I want drummers that are ready to be part of an amazing community of like-minded students, and that'll help you stay accountable and put you in a position to like push everyone else. That's how we do it. Students that aren't afraid of becoming teachers. I built teaching into this program because what I've learned as a teacher is that's really how you start owning this stuff. So I put everybody in my program into the position of teaching. We remember 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, 50% of what we see and hear, 75% of what we practice, but 90% of what we teach others. That's the kinesthetic range, if you see on this little chart over here. So I like to dive into that. This is what I call the Study the Drums Mastermind Cycle of Support. Yes, and it's called STD. If you notice, my logo is a virus, so we're leaning into that. But the cycle of support is how this whole thing is structured. And it's a system where you have our courses, because I believe everyone's time is important. And I don't want to be like me just sitting there working on a drum lesson with you, teaching all these things when it's something I could pre-record, put up into a course, lay it out in a framework, a path for you to follow. And then you just come to me for support. You come to me for, Jay, do I have this right? And then that way I could dial in that particular lesson to you, as opposed to you just taking a class online and leaving it up to yourself to figure that out. My time, our time is better spent just making sure you're getting everything just right and hitting your, getting past your roadblocks. That's what's really important. So how do we do that? So we have collaboration and accountability. Basically, we have mastermind sessions where the whole group gets together a couple of times a week, and I work with everyone individually, and then we work together as groups. Everyone has accountability groups that they get in daily and just talk about their outcomes for the day and their practices and how to go ahead and do it. We also record all of this. So everyone, when they practice, has gotten in the habit of actually posting their practice. So everyone's going to see it, which creates a little bit of that urgency that we talked about. So every day we have that reason for practicing, because you have to show your work. You have to turn around and say, hey, guys, this is what I did today. And everyone, jumps up and they say, hey, great job, man. Great job for getting this done. That's amazing. Instead of you just doing it daily on your own and not having that kind of support, it makes a difference. So we have that community. We have that fellowship. The other thing that's great about it, the most important thing, it eliminates that time in between lessons. So when you do something wrong, I notice right away. You could post a video. I could see it. I could give you a reply. The next day, I could say, oh, you're not doing it. Look how you're holding the stick. Look what's happening there. Your rebounds aren't doing the right thing. And I notice, and we can fix it. We don't have to wait a week. It just changes the whole thing in this kind of system. Now, these are the phases that I was talking about. This is the path that I have laid out. So the whole path and structure of the rhythm, accents, and sticking, that's all here. That's what the phases do. Daily accountability calls. This helps you with the urgency and the why. Collaboration calls. This is where we get in there one-on-one and really work on your playing. 24-hour access to the Study the Drums app, which is where this whole thing is housed. It's our own little version of social media. You have it on your mobile device, you have it on your computer, and you're always plugged in. So if you ever need to get in touch with me or anybody else, you have a question, you put it in, you instantly get an answer. Again, who is this not for? This is not for a casual hobbyist. This is not for someone who's not willing to make a real change right now. I'm looking for drummers that have been trying everything and nothing's working. I want drummers who are looking for, that are not looking for a secret quick fix, okay? Because you're not going to find that. Drummers who think that they're fine, that they could figure it out on their own. I don't want a lone wolf in this system. We all work together. Drummers who think they have all the answers. That's not who I'm looking for, okay? I don't know where you fit into this, but for a short time, I am opening up my calendar, and I open up my entire calendar this week for a limited number of these strategy sessions where we're going to get together and we could talk and see if you're a good fit for this program. And basically, I'll get in there either way, and we'll go deep on your playing. I'll find out exactly what's wrong, where you kind of fit into this model. And if it makes sense, we'll talk about inviting you into the program. Now, full disclosure, I do not invite everyone. A couple of people on this call have had these calls with me, and they know that I do not invite everybody. Not everyone's a good fit for this, and that's okay. But we don't know until we take a look. On that call, we're going to do an evaluation to see a few things. We're going to figure out your personal outcome as a drummer. If we could help you make that personal outcome happen, what are the real problems that are stopping you from getting it? Are we a good fit to help solve those problems with you? Are you a good fit for us? Are you positive, ambitious? We don't like to work with negative people. The mindset of this group is very important to me, and I do everything to protect that. And if all that's good, then and only then will we show you what the Study the Drums Inner Circle Mastermind looks like and invite you to be part of it. Is that fair? So if this sounds like you and you want to skyrocket your drumming with the mastermind, you want to see if this is the right thing for you, over the next few days, I've set aside a couple of times to talk about it. And this is the link. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to see if I can figure this out. But it is first come, first serve. And I'm going to run out of these really quick. So go ahead and just jump in. Okay. Again, we'll talk for roughly 45 minutes and I'll map out exactly the action plan to get you going, get you that clarity. Because that's the main thing. This will probably be the most valuable 45 minutes you spend working on your drumming career this year, to be honest. I mean, this is like such a valuable thing. Just even if you don't end up working with me, like I said, it's not for everybody. And I have had people that I've talked to that just weren't ready for this. And I'll tell them no if I don't feel like they're ready for it. But it's just something that, we could look at in the future. But if you are ready for it, if you're really serious about your playing, I don't believe there's anything else out there that comes close to getting you the results than this program. The students in my program are thriving. Our community is so awesome. And we get together and it's just such an amazing environment for learning drums. I just don't think there's anything out there like it. So again, who else is booked? Cherry booked the session. All right. Patty booked the session. Rafael said we'll talk later because I know you and I have already talked, but yes, I would love to talk again. Dan gave a little emoji. Does that mean you booked, Dan? Are you on my calendar? A couple more things and we're almost done here, guys. Good. I'll book another session. Yeah, Patty, do it. Get on the calendar. Let's get on it. Let's review. So we talked about some of these methods like watching YouTube. This is for all you guys that are self-teaching. The challenge with that is all this information overload. Online courses and mentorships are good, but they're organized versions of YouTube a lot of times, and they provide no accountability pretty much. Books and one-off courses. This is something we didn't really talk about, but how many of you have like 1 million books sitting on your shelf that you've never been through? And there's nothing wrong with books. Books are amazing, but they're tools. And it's not just the tools. Think of the course end of this is like the gym, but coming to that gym and getting a personal trainer that takes you through it. And we have our goal. We know what we're trying to get to. And we know then we pick what exercises we need to make that happen. That's what you're trying to do with this program. So we provide the gym and the training. And you're not going to get that even in private lessons. In private lessons, there's so much space in between. It leaves a lot up to the student to figure out, especially students that really try to space those out. I used to sell lessons in bulk. I do like a 10 lesson block. And I'd have students that would take a lesson that I wouldn't see them for 2 months because they're trying to save money and spread it out. And the challenge with that is I'm teaching the same lesson to them over and over again. And my one-on-one lessons were not cheap, but that's what ends up happening. And it drove me crazy. So this program is my answer to that. And again, the mentorships, the same thing. My biggest problem with mentorships is the time frame. They happen too fast. I just want, while you guys are sitting there booking, I want you to hear from some of these students that have been with me and been in the mastermind and my mentorships previously.
With the goal of playing the solo, I didn't think I could do that. And just being able to do what I did, just gave me more confidence that that's possible.
Before going through the mentorship, I thought I could play the drums. The songs that I'm sort of covering now and doing, I would never have attempted before. If you want to improve your drumming and go take it to the next level, the only way to do that is to do this.
And the steps that I took were getting with you. Your material, as we got into this in the very beginning, when you first gave me the reading sources and as we started printing things out, I was motivated by the curriculum. I look at it and go, oh, I can see what'll happen with this. But then I would find out that there were so many other things unexpectedly that came from it.
Anthony, awesome job.
Hey, thank you so much. This was awesome. I'm super pumped. Sky's the limit. I won't be able to sleep tonight, so this is great.
That's why we're here, my friend. That's why we're here.
So comfort breeds stagnation. Discomfort brings change. The drummers that you just heard from, they are drastically improved because they didn't succumb to their old habits. They took a chance. They were nervous, and getting past those nerves takes a second. You got to be willing to change and taking a year and really driving yourself and going at the drums like full on. It's a scary thing. But can you expect big change and great results by taking the same old actions? You see how that doesn't work? You got to ask yourself, all the things I've been doing up till now, has it really gotten me what I wanted? So you could do one or two things. You could do this on your own, hopefully do it right, conquer all those roadblocks that, every hiccup, try to figure it out. But you got to ask yourself if that's worked for you. Or you could have me by your side. Make sure that you're doing it right. Blast through these roadblocks like a rocket and accelerate your success faster than you ever could on your own. You could let me help you. Someone's already been there and blazed this path. I don't want you guys spending as much time as I did on this. I want you to have like the direct line. I want you to have a vehicle that helps you blaze the path. I want you in a Ferrari, not on a skateboard. Think of it like that. Right now, you have that choice. This system is what transformed myself and all of my students. Let's play a game. If all this did was allow you to have freedom of expression on the drums with complete freedom, would it be worth it? What could you do with that? How would that impact your life as a drummer and just in life? Throw a 5 in the chat. If you let me know, if it'd be worth it, just if it did that. Dan said 5. What if it allowed you to feel like a rock star every time you sat behind the kit? Would that be worth it? Even if you weren't playing in front of 20,000 people, you just sat down behind the kit in your basement and just crushed it on every song because you just knew what you were doing. Would that be worth it? If all it did was allow you to perform with other musicians at the highest level comfortably, would it be worth it? To nail that one song on the drums with confidence, would it be worth it? If all it did was allow you to inspire others through your playing, take that drum solo and your audience goes, wow, that spoke to me. Imagine having that power. Would it be worth it? I mean, if all it did was allow you to play for that one band, shine in that open mic or nail that recording session, would it be worth it? How much is that worth to you? I mean, I know how much it's worth to me. I've probably, invested $150,000 into my drumming education. So for me, it was like, if I wanted to study with somebody, it was like, how do I make this happen? So if you think you might be a good fit for this, I want you to book a strategy session with me. We have all those bonuses backing it up. That's never going to happen again. I already went ahead and dropped this in the chat. I think Tony did as well. I'm going to keep on putting in the chat so you guys so you know how to find it. And again, sending off who's booked. Again, throw a 5 in the chat if you've already booked one with me. These are first come, first serve. Right now, there's only 3 spots in the program. That could change. A couple of spots might be opening up because a couple of years are ending for a couple of people, but I do give people the option of continuing. A lot of people continue, but there might be another spot or so opening up. I'll let you guys know if that happens. But right now, I'm just looking for 3. Here's a couple more results. We can talk about this, but I just want to give John is a very good case because John actually had some medical issues recently that kind of took him out of it for a little while, but he's back in and playing. And, John is in his late 60s, early 70s and playing 5 nights a week in Vegas. So, he's out there doing it. Check out my student, Max. Max was not part of the mentorship, but he was a private student for a very long time. He just threw it up on Instagram, and I was like, that is the coolest thing. I just gotta share that with everyone. This is Adam. We saw Adam before. Adam is, like I said, he's my student that went through that Rhythm and Meter book. That so proud of him. Like that's insane. If anyone knows that book, and if you study with me, you will know that book. But it's a very, very difficult thing. This is my student Dylan.
But I will say all this timing stuff that I've been working on and whatever, it's fixing the inside counting on the E's and U's.
Okay.
And stuff is just solid. And now I'm playing like, last night I was like, rock. Dead set up for the time.
And in the last 6 days, this has just opened up. So if I can and I was just sitting here warming up, and I pulled it off Sunday just out of nowhere. My singles just, and that's really comfortable.
Right.
I'm not straining it. It's just like
it unlocked.
Like,
a little bit, right?
So I'm a believer in endurance now. That has completely unlocked my left hand in like a month.
Okay. This is my student Michael, who's learned Rosanna, and this was the inspiration for Glenn signing up with me, because Glenn's outcomes Rosanna. That was Mike at 16. He's like 19 now. But yeah, I mean, to be able to play that at 16 years old like that, incredible. Okay, so what's the difference between now and later? It's easy to put life on hold and say, I'd love to do something like this, but now is not just the right time. It's the biggest thing that I hear from people. I'd love to do this, but maybe like 6 months, maybe like 3 months from now, maybe a year from now. I'm here to tell you that time doesn't care, okay? In other words, like a year from now, you're going to be someplace or you're going to be someplace else. And it all depends on the actions you take now. So the way I like to leave this class is a teacher of mine said to me once, drums is like planting an oak tree, Jay. So when's the best time to plant an oak tree? The answer is 50 years ago. But what's the second best time? The second best time is right now. Make time an ally, not a thief. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me. Let's jump over to Zoom. All right? Great job, everyone. I'll see you over there.